I'm not gonna lie, part of me was not about to make this review for Facebook and YouTube and just make it Patreon only, because there is a scene in this movie where I was like, yeah, this writer has gone a little too far and this is ridiculous. And on this episode of Movie Breakdowns, I'm going to review a Patreon request from Bobby, the movie Tetsuo The Iron Man from 1989. What's up, world? Welcome to another episode of Movie Breakdowns. I'm your host, Ali Zakka. And before I get started, is there a review you want me to do? Let me know. Please put in the comment section below and I get to as best I can. Also at Patreon.com/AliZakka for $2 a month. $2, either jump in front of everybody, get your review out way before it comes out on Facebook and YouTube. You also get trailer reactions, trailer reviews, and also conversations and much more stuff on the Patreon. Now, let's go ahead and get into 1989 Tetsuo The Iron Man. And this is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen this movie, you can find it on YouTube. That's where I found it. I paid for it, watched it, and I wasn't going to, like, halfway through the movie, and this movie's only an hour and 7 minutes long, but I wasn't going to, like, do this review for Facebook and YouTube because of one of the images that happened in this movie that I felt like it was just so far out. I was like, why? Why is that a thing? Why is that a thing? But then I saw like Deep Focus Lens and a few other people review this movie, and I was like, all right, so this is not some movie that nobody talks about. This is a movie that actually has gotten reviews on. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and keep this review for Facebook and YouTube, not just Patreon. And what is this movie about? Well, this movie, I'm about to pull up the synopsis here because it's hard to explain just off of like your own visual look, because some things might blur. It's kind of hard to follow at times. So what this movie really is about, it's about and I'm gonna read it word for word here from Google. But a metal fetishist is driven mad by the maggots wriggling in the wound he made to embed metal into his flesh, runs out tonight, accidentally get hit by a Japanese businessman and his girlfriend. The pair dispose of the body, and when the businessman helped dispose of the body, he gets infected by the virus that the metal fetish had with the metal. It turns him into a metal monster. And that is the main gist of this movie. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of got confused on who was who with certain parts of this movie, because this movie doesn't have that much talking in it. The movie is more visual and more grotesque could be the word, because the pieces and the visual designs of the metal transformation of certain people look disgusting, look horrific, and just gross to see. And then you have to watch it, and then like there are certain scenes and cuts in this movie where it's like moving all over the place, and the camera's moving super fast and they speed up stuff. So you're just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Overload. And then you finally get to see what you're looking at, and then it's like another cut. And then you're like, okay, what is happening in this movie? But you can still follow it. It's just like a lot going on. One of the scenes, speaking of which, this is why I almost thought I wasn't going to do this, is the businessman, when he does get turned into the metal monster, starts his transformation, his private part, because it's YouTube friendly, his private part gets turned into a metal drill. And I was like, yo, what the heck am I watching here? And he tries to have intercourse with his girlfriend with the metal drill, and his girlfriend is scaring, fighting him off and stuff like that. He's now a monster. And then they do continue to have intercourse, and she dies. And I'm like, what the F? Like, why is this even in this movie? And it makes me think of like the 80s horror movies where like they had to have sex scenes. Well, there's the word. But anyway, they have to have sex scenes in movies. And you're like, why is that necessary to the plot? Like, to me, I feel like the writer wanted to get a fetish out, and he was like, I'm about to throw this in here. And there's multiple times in this movie where you do see intercourse or certain scenes, sexual scenes in this movie where I'm just like, is that necessary to the story? And you can make a thing how humans and technology are merging with each other, and we're so like elope with each other where you can't live your daily life without machines. And I guess people can find pleasure through machines, which I guess you do if you watch movies and adult films, stuff like that. So like you can go find the stuff out there that you only get through visually through machines versus a book or a pinup. So I guess if the writer wanted to talk about how machines and sexual interactions happen, sure, but I just felt like it was unnecessary in this movie, and there's a lot of sexual imagery in this movie as well that I felt like part of it didn't really need to be included to get the point of the movie of a monster movie where the man gets turned into a Iron Man sort of suit, not like Tony Stark Iron Man, but like a monster Iron Man where his whole body and everything is turned into different appliances and tools and metal pieces, and he is literally just a metal person whose body has developed and body horror into this just grotesque looking machine. And then there's like an anime fight that happens at one point where the metal fetish finds the Iron Man businessman, and then they fight each other, and he's like, he can control him with his fists, and he's throwing him across Japan and through this city and that city and town, whatever in the same town, not really cities, but he's getting tossed around. And I'm like, am I watching an episode of Power Rangers? How did I get here? And there's part of me in this movie watching it. I actually sat down and like I had it on my tablet, and I actually sat down and was like engrossed into this movie because I wanted to know what was happening next. Even though the story of this movie is not the strongest, I still was intrigued enough to figure out what's going on, what's the point of it all. Like I kind of want to know what's the point. I really did want to know what's the point. And it's reminded me of a drawing of a comic book I made when I was in high school, where my friend read it and she was like, there's no plot, it's just pure action. And I was like, that's the point. like I literally made the story where like it was just a 20-page comic book where it was just a pure action fest with different scenes and different designs and different details. So seeing this movie reminded me of that, where it's just like, this is a pure just, the writer and the director was like, I want to get my stuff out there. I want things I like sex and intercourse and all that stuff, so I want to show that. And then I like body horror and transformation and that kind of stuff, so I want to show that. And I want to show all this. I just want to pick random people and be like, bam, they fight each other. And then they merge into each other. And they become some gigantic tank monster that's planning on taking over the world. And I was just, at the end of it all, I was just like, huh, this movie is wild. and that's like my little first thoughts on it. It's been a while where I just jumped into my first thoughts and I didn't give the likes and dislikes. Because the visual horror of this movie is definitely like, it's visually horrifying. And in fact, the movie's black and white. It stays with me a lot longer than, I guess, a movie like Annihilation, where you do see that kind of body horror a lot on the movie Annihilation. But the color of it kind of maybe makes it not realistic, but makes it to the point where like my imagination doesn't go wild, like I already been told what it is. Versus this black and white movie, it was like my imagination, I had to really like think in to the design of the metal pieces and the looks of it just really made it look like more terrifying. The lady who's chasing the businessman in the hallway in the beginning part of the movie, where her arm is completely metal and her face is starting to take over, it was like, huh, that's terrifying. And then I like how the directing of the camera angle, I actually like the camera angle in this movie. I got the anxiety of the horror stuff, and there's different camera scenes, different cuts where the person's running in the shaky cam, and then it shows from above, and it shows from the side, and it shows on the ground, and like shaky cams all around, and it actually works for me in this movie. Sometimes shaky cams are overdone, but in this one it actually worked with him trying to run away from the horrific robot lady, zombie lady. So like that worked. But then towards the end, when that shaky cam came back and they were doing the fight scene and the merge and all that stuff, it was like, all right, I'm now like not checked out, but I'm just like, I'm over it at this point. And now we're just getting wild because let's get wild. Let's get crazy. And I kind of felt like that movie, I felt like the end of this movie was that way, where it was like, let's get crazy. How far can we throw our imagination out in this movie to order to get where like man and metal are becoming one and we're about to take over the world. Metal is about to rule the world. I don't know. The camera angles at the end of it kind of got a little too much, but I did enjoy that in this movie. My dislike in Ice, I'm not sure if I really had a dislike in this movie. It was almost like this movie just, when I got to the visual of the horror of everything, I was like, okay, this is a horror movie, and horror movie genres are usually not strong with story. Like, there's a handful I can think of that has strong stories. Most of it's the same generic person becomes monster, terrorizes people, or person gets transformed by disease, and the disease does is just a killer going down, hunting people down. So like the story is not the strongest, and never really why. Like nobody ever asked Jason why, or Michael Myers why, or Freddy Krueger why. It's always no. Actually, they do say why, but it's never the who or what. It's always why. And I got that from Dragon Ball Z Abridged when it came to Cell. He was like, nobody ever asked me who or what. They always say why. And I want to know the why of this movie. I really did. Like part of this movie, I really want to know like, why did they get infected? Why did this happen? Where is this going to? Like what's the point? And I felt walking away from this movie that I didn't get the point. And maybe it wasn't supposed to be a movie where you probably get the point. Maybe it was supposed to be like a movie where you just, it is what it is. It's a visual horror movie. The body horror is terrifying. If it got that point, it did its job. But movies have beginning, middles, and end. And the ending of this movie was just like, we will rule the world. Continue next time on Dragon Ball Z. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the cast, director, writer. So the director and writer is Shinya Tsukamoto, who is actually one of the characters in this movie. And the box office, I'm sure there is a box office on this. Well, I'm looking on IMDb. IMDb don't really have a box office, but it was released July 1st, 1989, made in Japan. And this movie is 1 hour and 7 minutes long. Horror, sci-fi, which the horror genre of this movie really hits. Like, it hits all the everything about horror this movie gives you. If you're a horror fan, you will enjoy this movie. Like, you really will love this movie as a horror person. Like, this movie, Brody's horror is ridiculous, and you're just like, huh. Like, I can't think of another movie where I've seen horror, like body horror, that bad. Like, I think Annihilation is probably one of the movies where I've seen where it's like, that's terrifying. If this movie was in color, I think it would be more like envisioned in my mind. Like, I won't be able to escape it. But, and it's not even like the main monster at the end of the movie that really sticks with me. It's the normal human stuff where the human body is starting to change, and then you get like that lady in the hallway terrifies me more, and like makes me stick in my mind more than just the final piece where the guy's like, I don't think his face, part of his face is human, everything else is all metal. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the cast. We have Tomoro Taguchi, who is the man, that's the businessman. Kei Fujiwara is the girlfriend, and Shinya Tsukamoto is the metal fetish. And for the most part, that's about it when it comes to the characters, because they don't really talk about much. You have a whole scene where the man and the woman, businessman and girlfriend, literally are just trying to get it on throughout the movie. That's the point of their part of the movie. They're trying to get it on, and then that's when the businessman gets turned to the monster, and then he has this drill for his private, and it's ridiculous. I just felt like Senya was really just like, I want to have sex in my horror movie. Let me have sex in my horror movie. And you're just like, I don't think that's necessary, bro. I don't think it's necessary. Why are you so fascinated with this? Why? I do know this is his first movie he made, and he almost gave up on him. He came back and finished it. I got that from a few other people's reviews, and also listened to Deep Focus Lens, her review about it, which, you know what? Me and her have come across a lot of reviews, thanks to Bobby. For one, a lot of movies that he has me reviewed, she has done it when I go look at other people's reviews. So I'm going to give a shout out to her. If you haven't go see her stuff, go look at it. It's pretty good, and she gives you a different perspective on it for somebody who does a little more research and somebody who doesn't give her their first thought process of it. Like she does a little thinking before going and getting a review, like she does, like what the artists and what the director and writers are thinking and how they got to this point, versus me, who kind of give you my first raw reaction and thoughts and my reviews from it. Like mine's is more just in your face, upfront, raw, while she gives you a little more detail behind it, which I appreciate that too. And you compare our two reviews to it. But and thanks to her, like I found out and a few other people that, like, this is this dude's first movie he made. Shout out to him. But I felt like just the overload of sexual stuff in this movie was just like not necessary. It's fan service that didn't need to be fan service. And you see my anime reviews, you know how I feel about fan service that's unnecessary. This movie has unnecessary fan service. But the whole horror picture, I keep going back to it because this movie's a horror film, hits and works for me. Any other thoughts? There's little to no talking in this movie. It's more visual, more visual works. It's just more visual. It's more visual. I don't have any other words to describe it. It's just like it's a visual piece of work when it comes to the movie. Like, you're gonna see more visual stuff and just gonna stick with you than the story and anything else. Music, there's some music there, and music is good. It works for the kind of horror vibe it's giving. The tone is very horrific. Like, this is a horror film. Like, this is top tier to me horror film. Like, it does its job. It does its job. Is this a Friday night movie? I would say, you know what, for horror fans, yes, this is a Friday night movie. Watch it, everybody. You're going to have some conversations out of this movie. This movie going to make you think a little bit. The movie will make you ask questions. Yes. Grading time. I'm going to grade Tetsuo The Iron Man. I'm going to give this movie a B. This movie gets a B for me, an 85%. And the reason why, story is probably where it doesn't hit the hardest. But everything else about this movie really does work when it comes to horror. This is a horror film. This is not an action piece. This is not a drama. This is a horror film that it really works the horror vibe. It does make you ask questions, make you want to figure out what's going on. But a movie that's made in 1989 that really hits that horror peak, it really works. It really, really does work. Yes, I'm not a fan of the fan service in this movie. I'm not a fan of the lack of a strong story, but the gist of it is there. Why does a fetish man comes after the businessman who's a robot and he wants to fight and control him by moving around? I don't know, but the camera angles and the tricks, the stuff that works in with the speed up stuff that works in this movie, that they did in this movie for this time, and the fact that this was a low budget movie too, it really does, like, it looks good. It works. So visually, this movie is an A, but I'm giving it a B because of the other stuff that came with this movie. The music work, the imagery works, and that's pretty much it. This movie gets a B for me. I feel like somebody's like, this is low budget, did the best they can, and they made this horror movie that really sticks for the horror vibe and there's stuff I was like, I'm really intrigued in this movie. B, 85%. IMDb gives it a 6.9, which is a D plus, and Rotten Tomatoes gives the movie an 80%. The critics give the movie an 80%, which is a B minus, and the fans give it a 70. The audience score give it a 76%, which is a C, solid C. So this movie is definitely a movie to get people talking, and I could destroy this movie when it comes to like that story, but I feel like the story works as far as what the horrific vision was trying to give you. And I did find myself like intrigued in this movie where I stopped and just was like, anything I was doing, I just stopped and was like, I gotta finish this movie. I gotta see how this movie ends, because this is some crazy stuff I'm watching right now. And this movie got me intrigued. Like, I was legit intrigued in this movie. I was legit wrapped around this movie's finger. But the reason why this movie doesn't rank up, like for a horror, I feel like it's one of the best horror movies I've seen. And I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna leave it at that, because I can talk about this movie over and over again and just talk about the different things I've seen and speak to it. But yeah, it's a B. Give it an 85%. If you've seen Tetsuo The Iron Man, what did you think? Please put it in the comment section below. Other than that, see you guys next episode of Movie Breakdowns, and keep being awesome. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I really appreciate that. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. If there's a review you want me to watch or do, let me know. Please put it in the comment section below this video. Also, you want to watch the last episode of Movie Breakdowns, it's right there. Just gotta click on it and you'll be able to watch it. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Love y'all, and keep being awesome.